We got a quorum. All right. Calling to order the regular meeting of the Inland Valley Development Agency on this December 11th, 2019. Madam Clerk is not here. Oh.
I believe she ran off to your.
Oh, all right. Well, for the record, are we being recorded? Yes? All right, for the record, go ahead and begin. State your name and the city that you represent.
Jack Woods, Colton.
Okay.
Sandra Barrow, San Bernardino.
Isaac Suchel, City of Colton.
Ovi Popescu, City of Loma Linda.
Kurt Agnew County.
Supervisor Josie Gonzalez for the county. Moving on to closed session. Mr. Burrows, will there be closed session today? Yes, there will be. All right. Anyone from the public wishing to come forward and speak on an item relative to the closed session? Seeing no one rush to the podium, I will close the public comment for closed session. And at this time, we will recess for closed session. Hey, Teddy. All right, so we are ready to recess to closed session. See, if you'd have been any later, we'd have been done with the meeting. Yikes. Yeah, that's what I use it for. All righty, legal counsel, any reportable action from closed session? Thank you very much. Once again, I'll call this meeting to order under open session. If everyone would please stand, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your hand over your heart. Let's look at our wonderful, beautiful flag. And together we begin and say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. All right. Any items to be added or deleted from the agenda, Mr. Burrows?
No items.
Any conflict of interest to be stated from agency members?
City of Colton has a conflict of interest on item number 5 on the consent calendar.
Very good. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, are there any informational items to present, Mr. Burrows?
Actually, at this point, I have just one informational item, and I just wanted to point out the dedicated participation of Councilman Sanchez. So in our backyard here on Thanksgiving morning, we hosted again the San Bernardino Turkey Trot, and he's quick. So in the rain, they got a decent turnout, and they had some fun out there. So, you know, in the spirit of the holidays, wanted to say thanks for coming out.
All right. Good deal. That's a nice notable mention. All right, moving on to the consent calendar. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the items on the consent calendar. I have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
And a second. Any comments? Any opposition? Hearing none, it is so ordered. Moving on to item number 8. Item number 8 is to award a contract to Hilltop Geotechnical, Inc. for the Mountain View Widening Project Phase 2 in an amount not to exceed $74,450.50. Mr. Harris, would you be kind enough to present this item?
Thank you very much. This item, as you know, Mountain View Avenue is soon to be rebuilt along with the bridge crossing Mission Creek. And during construction, you need to have firms, third-party firms, to come in and test materials. This could be concrete, asphalt, steel, street lights, all of those items. And what this company is going to do primarily is for the road work, including the new intersections that we're rebuilding, they will provide those services.
All right. Now, are there any questions, board members? I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'd like to move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, it is so ordered. Moving on to item number 9, which is to approve a professional services agreement with Advanced Civil Technologies for construction support services for the Mountain View Street widening project in an amount not to exceed $796,000. Mr. Harris, once again.
Thank you. Again, this item again is for Mountain View. Their primary work here is going to be construction support services. We will be using them to do all the coordination of information going between contractor, engineer, and the local agencies. They will be managing the paperwork. They will provide some inspection services for the bridge work, and they will be providing any technical support that we may need during the construction phase at the bridge area.
All right. Any questions, board members? I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, item number 9 is approved. Moving on to item number 10, which is to consider and discuss a draft 2020 business plan update for the Inland Valley Development Agency. Mr. Burrows, would you be so kind as to present this item?
Certainly. So this one, in the last several months, we have been chipping away at what's next. And this is intended not to cram this down your throat, so to speak, to provide you kind of an overview of where we've left off and then garner some more input and feedback. So I'd like to kind of go on to the next slide here. So obviously, we have a 10-year strategic plan outlook. We're at the 5-year update portion of that, and you all have been doing just what's in that blue bubble there, is evaluating and adjusting. You go to the next slide. The overwhelming feedback I've received is in our overall strategic plan, there were 4 primary original initiatives. One was the airport. The other was economic development. That's IVDA has done that since inception. Infrastructure and job creation and retention. And when we boiled that down this time around, if you think about airport projects, they actually fall under economic development or infrastructure. So this body in the recent year did a infrastructure project to bring FedEx to the airport. So that's the kind of stuff we're doing. But is that infrastructure? Yeah, it's infrastructure. So we've actually taken the 10-year project outlook and consolidated it into these 2 buckets. When you do economic development, like projects as we've done with Hillwood and most recently developers like Rita, there's job creation and retention that flows out of that. So that was actually really helpful to me to be able to say, okay, you're right. This makes it a little easier for everybody to follow, and for us as a public body to report progress to our partners in the public. So that's what you're going to see here in the coming slides. So the next slide is background that you all have already known, but for the public, we want to remind people of where IVDAs come from and essentially where the project outlook is headed. If you go to the next slide, this is just showing off of your logos because we're proud of you guys as being founding partners in this organization. And then the next slide, if you ever wonder why the heck airport comes up in an IVDA discussion, I always try to give the public and everybody the actual provision in the JPA agreement that says we're here to actually support an airport. Not own an airport, but support an airport in the way that Sabia was formed. And the next slide, this is a graphic that we kind of put together for the public to kind of say what the heck is an IVDA. Some people have all sorts of machinations of it, and that's sort of just basic steps in what it has previously done and what we've been doing in recent years. In the next slide, this is a little background on some of the businesses and projects that we've been able to assemble in the various groups, types of organizations that we need in order to do successful projects out there. The next slide here comes from, again, some of our formative DNA in why we do what we do, which is, I think, pretty straightforward. And then the following slide is what we continue to face as a public entity. Some of the issues in being able to continue to do projects and quality programs. not unlike what you have in your various public bodies and organizations. The next slide here is the sort of snapshot of the proposed focal areas moving forward in the next 5 years, kind of summing up, succinctly, focus on these types of areas. And then the background next is the two different identities that IVDA has as a unique base reuse agency. So the redevelopment powers that we used to have, and those funds are in a successor agency. And then we have the separate JPA, which is the original entity. On the successor agency side, this is a graphic that kind of says what happens as you wind down redevelopment. So taxing entities start getting a bigger piece as obligations are paid off. That's been going on ever since 2012. And then on the JPA, this is a reminder of kind of what other activities and funds that the JPA sources. And, these have their various different timelines and what have you, but that's built into the formative document itself. And then the following slide talks about where market opportunities have been. And some of the additional feedback I've gotten is some of the new sectors and industries that we might assemble resources to attract. And in recent years, particularly, aerospace and advanced manufacturing opportunities have come not only to the county and the region, but are starting to come across our doorstep, and that can create some new projects that we've never seen before. So we thought we'd include that. The roadmap for economic development, this is sort of our sphere of influence here, and looking at trying to put resources in key locations. And that is what was in the strategic plan labeled as an economic development gateway. And obviously our access to our freeway infrastructure creates that obvious opportunity with the airport and other transportation resources. The next slide is the base reuse project area. And again, the question I get from the public all the time is, why is it all blotchy like that? Well, when IVDA was formed, those other areas already had other redevelopment projects or programs, so you couldn't include them because there was already obligations from city or other operators out there. But that is essentially where our focal projects have been historically. And then in infrastructure, this is the updated roadmap from the strategic plan. Obviously, key corridors that need some help, need some funding, need some improvement. Jim just talked about one of the main ones we're centered on now with Mountain View, but we've got a lot of opportunity and need out there for years to come. And then the following slide was one of the concepts that we talked about earlier this year, which was an old design that we dusted off with SBCTA as a lot of these rail projects are going on, including the one down the block. And so in the 5-year outlook, there is the opportunity to work with SBCTA on some conceptual design for that commuter rail connection directly to the base.
How old is this?
So we actually presented this very slide back in, I believe it was February of this year. But the concept...
I'm talking the original one.
The original
Is it 05, 06?
Commuter rail concept goes back to a map that I drew on with Mitch Alderman back in the sandbag days. And so that was the best alignment. And as a recovering railroad employee myself, I mean, we did a little bit of doodling, and there is a way to get there without too much impact in right-of-way acquisition. So.
Right, because if I'm not mistaken, I believe in 05 we were discussing the opportunity at hand at that time to design and bring in a spur, a railroad spur to the airport, which again, if I remember correctly, I supported relative to trying to be aggressive and proactive to mitigate traffic decongestion and get have our own, if you will, a bit of a drayage going on over here.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So is there a
Yeah,
renewed
I've actually-
possibility?
Yeah, I've spoken to Dr. Wolf, and he's willing to have some staff work with us on that. Carrie Schindler's got her hands full with the Arrow right now, but there are other SBCTA staff that can
Would
work
that
with us.
be spurred, oh, pardon the pun, would that be initiated, if you will, or relative to the Redlands Rail coming in?
It's an adjunct to it, so it wouldn't hold up anything. It would be a
Good.
separate cooperative agreement that would be coming back to your way. And again, some groundwork's been laid on that, so, just wanted to report back on
That
that.
would be nice.
And then, education and workforce, obviously, our partners at the county are pros at this. And we just wrapped up the last series of our internship program with Generation Go. And our two interns continue to surprise us again. So they did their presentations in this boardroom here last week. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. So they've already tapped us for another cadre of students next round. But two of these young people we had this year, every time I offer them, a summer job, and these two said they might take me up on it. I struck out, terribly with last year's two because they just wanted to get to college, but these two actually thought they might want to work at this place a little bit longer. So sometimes you get lucky, but we do keep a good beat on our educational institutions and try to support programs any chance we get. In the very back of the packet, though, is really kind of the nuts and bolts. So our staff love these sheets. They're their favorite. But this is how internally we kind of track progress. So we set, a project, a timeline, and some resources, and then we track how we did. So we printed off larger versions. I mean, it gets a little hard to follow there, but the hope was to provide this to you to be able to kind of peruse at your leisure. And if you have questions or other ideas, or hey, why don't we look at doing something like this, we got time to get there. So that concludes my report.
All right, any questions? Supervisor?
I know, Mike, we talked earlier before about, we have a great asset here that's underutilized.
Yep.
And a lot of these projects, they take a long time to put together. And just like anything else on the infrastructure and the bigger buildings and bringing those bigger employers. We talked a little bit about maybe some things we could do midterm or short-term while those bigger projects been developed in the advancement of drone technology, manufacturing, repair, education, those type of things. I'm just wondering what progress, what do you see in the short term that may be working
Well,
with
I'm
that?
glad you brought that up, sir. So if you look in the detailed sheet under economic development,
You can.
the second line item on that is UAS Training
go.
Center Initiative. Ms. Pritchett and I actually just had a meeting this morning with representatives from Cal State who think they might want to participate. And with the supervisor's encouragement, we've gotten positive feedback from the U.S. Forest Service, County Fire, and we believe that one of Unical's affiliates would also come to the table. So the concept there would be to get a working group established ASAP, the first of the year, because there's quite a bit of interest in it. And what you've
think
been
it's-
saying for a while is very true. So,
Very good.
yep.
Any other questions? I have one quick one. Relative to page 17, as we look at old maps, how we came to get here, to be here, I'm wondering if enough time has gone by where some of the projects that were identified back then relative to either City of Highlands, City of San Bernardino, or the county have either come to fruition or not. Sometimes things fall apart by the wayside. And I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity for us to begin to relook at this, revisit this, and if there is any opportunity under a new lens, looking from 2020 forward, probably to 2050, if there could be perhaps a workshop or something that would allow us to explore any possibilities of a specific plan overlay that could perhaps help ensure between, since we're in the mid gap of the 5 years, with 5 years to go on the 10-year plan, that we might be able to encourage a different, more progressive design now that Ontario Airport is under the county's purview, and that things are really changing here at IVDA.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, we can actually probably have that graphic for you at your next meeting.
If that is amenable to board members, I thought. All right, Councilmember Sucho?
Yeah, Mike, if you can go back to the affiliated educational page, I think it's one back, or there you go. I see San Marino Cal State's there. Do you work with Dr. Leo Medina on that? Is he involved in any of this? Because he runs a logistics, his students, he prepares them for any logistics.
Right, no, yeah, actually, certainly have had discussions. We don't have an initiative currently underway, but we've had discussions, absolutely. We work closely with the Center for Entrepreneurship, the Transportation Center, but yeah, if there's an initiative he's got going that I'm not aware of, I'm happy to follow back up.
All right, any other questions? This is a consider and discuss item. So if there is consensus, perhaps Mr. Burrows can bring back some kind of information that will help us to bring us to a point in time current as to see where things are relative to land use, and also relative to, I believe there's, is it AB 330 that's on the horizon? And let's figure out how that's going to impact us in a positive or negative way, don't know. But ultimately wanting to make the airport, make IVDA be a better partner with the airport and with its joint power members.
Certainly, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, I will go over to item 11, if I can find it right here. Item number 11 is to consider and discuss the update action plan for the Inland Valley Development Agency through December 31st, 2019, which is around the corner.
All right, so
Mr. Burrows.
we are in December, and at the last meeting, you actually, a month early, got your annual audit done, so thank you for that. That's filed, and Alka and team are getting that prepped this spring for disclosure to bondholders, so that box is checked. And then what you just heard was your strategic plan update. As we just mentioned with Supervisor Hagman, we have an interesting and unique opportunity with UAS and aerospace firms gaining interest here to actually utilize, hopefully, part of the Regional ARF Training Center site when it's not being used, to be able to actually do live, drone tests and exhibitions there. So we'll probably have an update on that at the next meeting, if not followed by some of the participants making presentation here. So that's some of the fun stuff we get to do. So with that, concludes my report.
Sounds good. At this time, I will open public comment. Anyone from the public wishing to come forward and speak on an item that is on or off the agenda but relative to this agency. Now, these days, we keep hoping. All right, I will close the public comment. Board members, any comments? Hearing none, I will simply say before I adjourn, may you all be blessed. Wishing you some very safe holidays. Merry Christmas with God's grace, that we are able to come back with more wisdom and more strength and more dedication in 2020. Be blessed with that. This meeting is adjourned to Wednesday, January 8th of the year 2020.
Next decade.
Let's do it.
See you next decade.